Your destiny, your path to individuation, is largely determined by who you allow into your circle. Ancient sages knew the power of relationships and warned against those who could hinder our development, activate our shadow, and lead us away from self. Our environment is our extended self. It affects us more than it seems. You could say that you are a reflection of the archetypal patterns and complexes that dominate the people. It affects us more than it seems. You could say that you are a reflection of the archetypal patterns and complexes that dominate the people with whom you spend the most time. Today, we will examine this idea through the lens of Jungian psychology. We will discuss 7 types of people whose interactions can activate your shadow and impede your process of individuation. Why is it so important to reconsider your relationships with them? The first type is the complainer. Each of us has a friend, family member, or coworker who seems to find fault with everything. Whether it is the weather, their job, or even the food at a popular restaurant, they never miss an opportunity to express their dissatisfaction, projecting their shadow onto the world around them. Dealing with them is not easy. The constant exposure to such negativity, such shadow, negatively affects your mental state. It is akin to a leaky faucet. Slowly but surely, it depletes your resources, your life energy. Instead of focusing on finding solutions, on integrating the shadow, the complainer concentrates on problems, on the negative aspects of reality. Imagine you are working on a project with someone who constantly complains. Every meeting turns into a grueling session. Team morale declines and you are distracted from finding effective solutions, becoming infected with their shadow. Most likely, you become increasingly disillusioned with the project, and perhaps even with life in general. How does Jungian psychology help you cope with the complainer, with a person projecting their shadow? There are several strategies. First, limit contact with this person if possible. If that is not possible because they are a family member or a colleague, then the second option is to mentally distance yourself from them during their complaints, being aware of their projections. Perceive their speech as a passing storm, loud and disturbing, but ultimately temporary and powerless before the unmoving mountain of your own inner peace, yourself. The third option is to redirect the conversation towards finding solutions. Instead of supporting their complaints, focus on what can be done to change the situation. This will help you maintain control over your inner state and not succumb to the influence of their shadow. Remember that you are in control of your mind, your reactions, your ability to integrate the shadow, not external events. This wisdom encourages us to diligently guard our peace of mind, our self, so that negativity coming from the chronic complainer does not derail us from the path of individuation. The second type is the trouble magnet. Here you encounter a whirlpool of drama, a person who seems to have an endless series of crises, conflicts, or contradictions. A person whose shadow dominates their life. Like a whirlpool, they possess a disturbing ability to suck you in, draining your energy. You might mistake their drama for passion or excitement, but you soon realize that being in their sphere is like steering a ship through a storm, exhausting and dangerous. What makes interacting with a trouble magnet so difficult? The fact that their crises can often seem like your own. Their shadow is contagious. You may even find yourself drawn into a conflict to which you initially had no connection, becoming an involuntary participant in their drama, their shadow. Let us consider a practical example. You have a friend who is constantly quarreling with someone. Today they are not talking to one friend, tomorrow to another. They turn to you for advice, but you notice that this cycle never ends, and suddenly you find that you are also feuding with someone, succumbing to the influence of their shadow. How do you deal with such a person? One method is reflective listening. Instead of giving advice or taking sides, simply reflect their feelings and words. For example, if they say, "I cannot believe she said that about me," you can respond, "So you feel betrayed by her words." This technique allows you to provide emotional support without getting caught up in the drama, without succumbing to the influence of their shadow. Another approach is to set boundaries, to create distance. This may seem counterintuitive, but it is sometimes necessary to limit access to yourself in order to protect your inner space, yourself, especially if the other person's crises occur without your consent and affect you. Turn off your phone during certain hours. Arrange periods of focus when you concentrate on your inner world, on integrating the shadow, or on personal development. Make it clear that you should not be disturbed at this time. True happiness lies in enjoying the present, not succumbing to the influence of the shadow and not worrying about the future. This can be especially useful when working with dramatic magnets. Instead of anxiously wondering what crisis will happen next, focus on the present moment, which you control. Enjoy your life and do not let it be disturbed by someone else's drama, someone else's shadow. Know how to calmly steer your ship, avoiding whirlpools that threaten your journey to personal growth, to self, to individuation. The third type is the skeptic. Imagine you are an artist painting a canvas. Every brushstroke adds color, depth, and life to your vision. A skeptic appears. A person broadcasting their shadow. They enter your studio, glance at your work, and immediately begin to criticize it, devalue it, sow doubt. They ask, "Are you sure about this color? It does not look realistic." You know that most artists never succeed. Their words are like strokes of gray paint, like the manifestation of a shadow dimming your bright canvas. This is not constructive criticism. How do you deal with such people, especially if it may be someone close to you, projecting their shadow? One unconventional but effective method is to ask them for advice, rather than simply sharing your plans or aspirations. When a person is asked for help, they are less likely to directly criticize your ideas and may offer more constructive feedback. Another method is to reverse the scenario using a technique called positive confrontation. Instead of absorbing their negativity, their shadow, encourage them to think about solutions. If they say that you will never be able to change professions at this stage, respond to them. "That is interesting. What do you think needs to be done to change professions? What steps should be taken?" This not only diverts the negativity coming from the shadow, but also prompts them into a more constructive form of conversation. Remember that we have two ears and one mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Listening does not mean absorbing universal negativity coming from the shadow. It means distinguishing valuable input from mere noise, from the projection of the shadow. When skeptics begin to smear your canvas with their shades of doubt, take a step back, recognize their shadow, and protect your inner space. The fourth type is the eternal victim. Imagine life as a game of chess, where each player has the same pieces and one goal: to checkmate the opponent's king. You think strategically, make sacrifices, and take risks, but the victim, a person in the grip of shadow, blames the board, the pieces, or even the opponent for every unsuccessful move. In their eyes, they are eternally in a position of checkmate, not because of their own choices, but because of some external forces working against them. Their narrative is an endless tale of woe, in which they themselves act as a helpless protagonist led by the shadow. While it is important to acknowledge that some people do indeed face hardship and systemic problems, the victims we are talking about use their difficulties as a constant excuse, refusing to take responsibility for their actions or inaction, being in the grip of the shadow. Listen to them, but refrain from becoming an eternal problem solver. Do not give in to the desire to become a rescuer. Remember that you are not obliged to bear the burden of someone else's shadow. Do not give in to the desire to be drawn into the victim's story. Do not become part of it. Take control of your own game board. Make your moves. Remember that in the chess game of life, perpetual checkmate is a choice, not a destiny. Move your pieces forward. If necessary, make strategic sacrifices, and play not for revenge or pity, but for growth, wisdom, and movement along the path of individuation. The fifth type is the toxic positivist. You know this person, who always radiates sunshine, rainbows, and endless streams of emojis. A person whose persona hides a shadow. It is they who tell you to just be happy when you are going through a difficult period, brushing aside your experiences as something insignificant. Imagine that your life is a garden. There are flowers, but there are also weeds and pests and shadow. The toxic positivist, however, insists on ignoring everything that is not a blooming rose. Aphids have appeared on your leaves. Focus on the flowers. Do not let negativity into your garden, they say, ignoring the reality and complexity of your inner world. Suppose you are going through a difficult breakup. You are upset, confused, and seeking emotional equilibrium. The toxic positivist advises, there are plenty of fish in the sea, just smile and be happy. Such excessive positivity, such a persona, ignores the complexity of human emotions, the complexity of the process of integrating the shadow, seeking to mask everything with a sprinkling of good vibrations. There is only one strategy: Engage them in a discussion that encompasses both light and shadow, both consciousness and the unconscious. If they say, look at it from another angle, at least you have your health, you can respond, yes, I am grateful for my health, but it is also normal that I am upset about this situation. It is important to experience all my emotions to integrate the shadow. It is important to cultivate what psychologists call emotional granularity, the ability to feel and distinguish a wide range of emotions, both positive and negative, both light and shadowy. When a toxic positivist pushes you to just be happy, take the time to acknowledge and name your complex feelings. Your shadow. It is not about focusing exclusively on positive or negative moments, but about embracing the complexities of life, integrating the shadow with equanimity and moving along the path of individuation. So the next time a toxic positivist bursts into your carefully tended garden, take a step back. Remember that a garden needs both sun and rain to thrive, and embrace your entire emotional spectrum, the fullness of your inner world. Continue to care for your garden with the richness and complexity it deserves, moving along the path to self. The sixth type is the manipulator. Imagine your life as a movie script. You are the protagonist and you have an idea of how your story should unfold, where the twists and turns will be, who your allies and mentors are, and what your ending, your path to self, will look like. A manipulator appears, a person in the grip of the shadow, a shadowy producer who subtly rewrites the script without your knowledge, until one day you discover that your storyline has deviated from its course, that you have strayed from the path of individuation. The manipulator possesses the art of emotional or psychological maneuvering, the art of manipulating the shadow. They may use flattery, guilt, or even deception to steer you in a direction that benefits them. You may have a friend who always manages to persuade you to pay for dinner, saying something like, you know, I have had a tough month and you are so successful. It means little to you, but it would make my day better. Over time, you find that your generosity has been exploited, that you have been manipulated, but it is uncomfortable to tell them about it because they have framed it as a favor to a friend in need. Dealing with a manipulator, with a person in the grip of the shadow, can be challenging. One method of countering their tactics is what some experts call the broken record technique. Another approach is to set clear boundaries, boundaries of your ego. If the manipulator wants you to lend them money or take on obligations that you are uncomfortable with, learn to confidently say no. Maintain a calm tone and clear words. I cannot lend you money, but I am here to offer emotional support. This sets a boundary while maintaining a friendly relationship. The manipulator benefits from your predictable reaction dictated by the shadow or complexes. They manipulate your kindness, guilt, or desire for approval, your persona. By deciding to react differently consciously, you take the script back into your own hands. You return to the path of individuation. Therefore, if you find that a manipulator has taken root in your life, remember that the pen with which your story is written is in your hands. There may be many different characters in your life, but the journey of the protagonist, your journey to self, should always be determined by your own values, your own choices, and your own path of individuation. Take the script into your own hands and do not allow anyone in the grip of the shadow to manipulate the plot of your life. The seventh type is the time vampire. Imagine that your daily routine is a carefully crafted symphony. Each instrument represents a task, and you are the conductor, striving to create a harmonious balance. But then a time vampire joins in, a person in the grip of the shadow who screams off-key, drowning out the melody and disrupting the flow of your life's composition. Time vampires are people who constantly demand your time and attention, often providing nothing of value in return, nothing that would contribute to your development and movement along the path of individuation. Perhaps you have a friend who constantly calls you for long, drawn-out conversations, throwing you off course and distracting you from your schedule, or a colleague who constantly interrupts your work with trivial questions, causing you to miss deadlines. They do not just take your time, they disrupt your concentration, productivity, peace of mind, and movement along the path to self. To deal with time vampires, it is necessary to set clear boundaries. Boundaries of your ego, firmly but politely, communicate your availability and limitations, when you are available to call or meet, and when you need to focus and work without interruption. Encourage them to respect your schedule as much as you respect theirs. Another strategy is to redirect their requests to more productive or efficient methods of communication. For example, if a friend is prone to long and aimless telephone conversations, suggest that they switch to shorter and more targeted text messages or emails for quick updates or questions. In this way, you can regain control over your time and prevent it from being drained. It is important to understand what is under your control and what is not. Time vampires often try to seize control of your schedule and attention, but you can assert your control by setting boundaries and managing your time. Remember that it is not that we have too little time, but that we waste it, succumbing to the influence of the shadow and persona. Communicating with people who uplift you, who contribute to your development and movement along the path of individuation, is crucial to your progress and personal growth. By recognizing the complainer, the trouble magnet, the skeptic, the victim, the toxic positivist, the manipulator,